On this episode of the OverArch Podcast, we're speaking with Colten Russell. Colton has always taken his work seriously, but it was after graduating university that his path really came into focus. From mechanical engineering to leadership roles in management and operations, he's faced several moments where he had to choose between different industries, disciplines, and directors. Today, he's focused on building, leading technical teams, and manufacturing steel components for industrial mills across North America. Along the way, Colton's learned the importance of discipline, balance, and taking care of himself as part of building something sustainable. Here's Colton, and here's his journey.
You are listening to OverArch.
Colten Russell, thanks for having the conversation here today on this podcast, this new venture I'm off to. But kind of just to give you a brief idea of what this is and why you're sitting here. The OverArch Podcast is a podcast where I speak to people about their career journeys, where they are now, where they've come from, the choices they've made, what they would looking back at their young selves, what advice would they give, kind of things like that. But you have a very interesting title today. You're a director of engineers. Is that correct?
Director of engineering.
Yeah, director of engineering. So it's not all the end, but so let's start with your life where you are today.
Sure.
Okay. Kind of, get into as much detail as you like, just to set the tone, and then we're going to look back as a young Colton perhaps and just see how you're focused, because becoming an engineer is a dedication. I remember just a quick backstory here. When I was at UBC, I had a few friends who were engineers, and they would take 8 courses, and they would do their football or they do their thing. It was an intense program, and it was something that I knew I was not going to do. So it takes a different person for sure. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of what you're doing today and what your role is and who you are?
Yeah. Well, where to start? I guess born and raised in Chilliwack, so I've always been here. Me and my wife and dog, and both my parents still live here. My 2 sisters are in BC as well, so lots of roots in Chilliwack and kind of Lower Mainland.
I didn't know you lived here your whole life. See,
okay,
cool.
No, born and raised. So I went to Victoria for school and kind of bounced around different places for some short work terms, co-op terms and stuff like that. But always kind of found myself coming back home. So
you are a UVic engineer.
Yep.
There's some rivalry in British Columbia between engineering, isn't there?
Back
in the day, or
a little bit, because like in BC, there's 2 main schools, the UBC or UVic, right? You can go to others. There's SFU and UBC Okanagan and a couple other different schools, but at least for the Lower Mainland, it was always a choice between UBC or UVic. So there's a bit of rivalry there, right? UBC is the big Vancouver school. UVic's a bit smaller, different vibe, much like the 2 cities, right?
Yeah.
So there was always a bit of healthy rivalry about what the better school was and what the better program was.
Okay.
Stuff like that.
We're probably going to, as you're speaking to, I'm getting more questions here. We're probably going to jump around a little bit because with like I said, to become an engineer, it is a dedication like none other.
Mm-hmm.
When, as a young person, let's go back. So can you remember the sort of your earliest stage when you decided, I think engineering is going to be something, or were you like, as a young person, were you into Lego? Did you like to build? Like, what was it? When was your earliest memory of sort of going this direction?
Yeah. No, I guess I wasn't the stereotypical engineer, where a lot of engineers that I've worked with, similar stories, building things, taking things apart. For me, like my earliest memories were more around math. For example, like when I was I don't know how young I would have been, but pretty young, maybe 7, 8 years old. My parents would write out timetables, and they would just get me to do like simple math problems. Like I had a kind of a hunger to solve problems that way from a very, very young age. And I remember they, kind of magnet on the fridge, kind of get me to do them, and then do another set, and I got joy from solving those problems. So that was like very early on. Like my parents, they would tell you that they saw those types of signs, right? Counting things, like I would take out our big jar of money and just count, right? 10 cents, dollar, $2, whatever. And
Holy cow.
just
That's
things
very
like
cool.
that,
Yeah.
that I would like
Yeah.
find enjoyment like from a very young age. So those were some of the kind of like early signs.
Yeah.
As I got older, like, going through middle school and high school, like definitely was more math, physics, and enjoyed all of that. But I didn't really know I was going to go into engineering until honestly, I was probably 19 or 20.
Okay.
At that point, I'd already committed to finishing a trade, which we'll probably talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Yes.
Yeah. And a couple friends had gone into engineering, so I knew a little bit more about it. I'd actually worked with a few engineers in my trade. And funny enough, long story short, once I did decide to go to engineering, a few years later, I was cleaning out my closet of like high school binders and
Yes.
stuff like that. And I actually found my planning binder from grade 10 when you do all of your job kind of career projections and assessments and stuff. And I came across my career plan or path, which actually said mechanical engineering.
Oh,
so
wow.
it was really weird because I was probably 24, 25 at this point.
Oh, interesting.
I'd gone into engineering and was pretty well on my way to completing it. And all along, I never really had planned for that path. It kind of, just happened. And then looking back to maybe I was 13, 14 years old, and there I was. I actually had this assessment done, and it said I was,
Wild.
I was a good fit for mechanical engineer. So
Interesting.
yeah, so I guess it was always meant to be, I guess, but I never really felt that way,
Yeah. No. Well, this is what the podcast is about: is to kind of have those little reflections about, oh yeah, maybe that did work. I mean, I think, were your parents like engineers or math science kind of focused, or?
No, my dad was a machinist.
Okay.
And that, he was a machinist for 45 years.
So problem solver.
Yeah, definitely problem solver. Definitely like that type of part of the brain is active a lot when you're dealing with numbers, dealing with equations, dealing with programming and things like that. A CNC machinist. And so that's kind of how I went on that path. Was when I was 14, I started, I wanted to work, wanted to start making money, tried a paper route for
here we
6
go.
months.
So this is where we go. So you did the paper route for 6 months.
Yeah.
Those are good. That's a good, you make no money.
No, you don't. And it was more work for my dad, cause it was, he's working a full-time job. Me and my two younger sisters, we each played sports. I was playing soccer and baseball. My sisters were playing baseball and either gymnastics or ice skating at some point. And, we were always dual sport kids, so
with a paper route as well.
With a paper route and everything else.
So 6 months, your dad finally said, like, listen.
Yeah, I mean, we did like the winter, and I think part of the challenge was, I don't know what the typical path is to getting a paper route, but we had gotten one, and you don't really choose where you get to deliver papers, and so we were kind of downtown Chilliwack and some seedy kind of areas, a couple alleys and stuff.
Some
like
real
this.
life happening.
Yeah, and so I'm like, I'm 13 years old doing my own thing, and my two sisters with my dad doing a different route in the same area.
Oh my goodness.
And in the winter it's dark at 4:30, 5, and we're doing this around 5:36, and it's dark.
Oh my goodness.
And so we did it for a few months, and then it was kind of like, for it's just not worth the headache of it. So
Well, I think as parents too, you kind of, that's the first good job. You're like, okay, you got responsibility, you have to be on time, things have to be delivered, but there comes a point when it's like, okay, gas is costing me more than this, like, so you have to do some business decisions in the paper. So when I did, Ryan, that he was on the podcast earlier, he spoke about his paper route as well. So, and I also had a paper route. So yeah, it seems kind of that's the base.
Yeah.
We start from there. So in your high school years, you also played sports, so that maybe you didn't have as many jobs in high school, but what was it like in high school, doing jobs? Were you working after school or between practice? What kind of gigs did you get there that taught you your life skills today?
Yeah, well, I often tell people this story because once I decided I wanted to start working, I was 14 years old and tried the paper route. That didn't really work. my mom, she worked in the hospital. She's a kind of a clerk. So she's worked in a few different departments. At the time, she saw that there was a job posted with Fraser Health for, I forget what the title was, but effectively the role was for a young person to work for Fraser Health to go into like corner stores and try and buy cigarettes. So it was actually like kind of,
Okay.
yes,
I'm settling in for this one.
yeah. So that was the gig, is you try and go in and ask, just ask to buy cigarettes. And if they, if they sell them to you, you're clearly underage, right? They're trying to kind of weed out the establishments out there that are selling to underage kids, right? And so I actually applied for this job, and
now you're trying to quit smoking?
well, no. So
Just kidding, go.
the way it ties back to the sports thing is because I went through the interview and I was 14. It's my first like real formal interview.
Yeah.
And it was kind of intense. There was, I think at some point there was 3 people that were interviewing me.
Yeah.
There's an element of the interview that even to this day I've never encountered again. So they had me go into a room that I'd never been in before, and they said, okay, you have 60 seconds, or maybe it was 2 minutes. And you got to remember everything you can in this room. And then we're going to take you out of the room and you got to write everything down.
Oh, okay.
And what it was a memory test for your recall if you happen to be in court and have to testify to the situation.
And you're 14?
And I'm 14.
Just to be clear, okay.
Yeah,
Wow,
14.
Adult.
I know. Well, and in my first interview, right? So, so that was that was kind of intense, and I went through that. And anyways, we got through the interview. Another part of the interview, which was kind of odd, was we went to McDonald's, which was next door. And the whole thing was they were asking strangers how old they thought I was, again, to try and weed out. They didn't want people that looked like they were 19. They needed to show that I would clearly be identified as like underage.
Okay.
We actually got asked to leave McDonald's because we were, kind of hassling the patrons there. Yeah.
Kind of, why are you asking?
Yeah.
I could see how that come across.
Yeah. So again, it was another odd kind of part of the interview. But at the end of the interview, they kind of asked me, okay, well, how are you going to get to work? What's your schedule like? And me as, a 14-year-old kid who's playing baseball full time, I'm, doing other things. I'm like, well, I've got practice on Mondays and Tuesdays. I was in band at the time. I've got band practice Wednesdays. I'm like, well, and I gave them a window of like 2 hours in the week where I could work, and they're like, yeah, that's not going to work. So
but
didn't get that job.
Didn't get a job, but what a fascinating process. Like, hey, a 14-year-old undercover narc agent.
Yeah,
are you ready
pretty
to
much.
work for CISA or okay.
Well, yeah, maybe my life would have gone a totally different direction had I got that job.
Absolutely, you could have like got a thirst for this.
Undercover agent.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, going from a paper route to like suspectingly bringing down bad players in the tobacco industry. That's
exactly.
Good,
yeah.
Okay, so you didn't get that job, but I mean, obviously with sports that took up a lot of your time.
Yeah.
But so, would it be fair to say that now, as you go into your university, like so 19. Is that your first year university? 19 or 18? 18, 19?
Yeah, I think 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're at university, were you like, okay, I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to apply for UVic? Or okay. So when did that decision sort of come to place, and how did that?
Yeah. Well, actually, what happened? So when I was 14, after I actually went to work with my dad. So my dad is a machinist. I did have some availability like on the weekends, and evenings, stuff like that, went on kind of holidays and things like that. So I ended up actually going to work with him on Saturdays to start 6 a.m. to 12, kind of just to get out there, get working. I wasn't allowed in the shop because I was underage. So they had me out, weed whacking, filling in potholes, pressure washing, all those types of stuff. Yeah. And I did that while I was in high school. That was my job. And then there was weeks where I had more availability, so I was there longer. All the holidays and stuff, like I said, I got to do that. But that's how I got into the trade. I actually got an apprenticeship in grade 11.
Oh, so this was the trade you were?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was able to get an apprenticeship, which is nowadays is, I think, kind of rare because most companies they want some type of commitment. You know, if they're going to commit to you to completing your trade, they want to know that you're serious, you're going to follow through and
Yes.
potentially work there. So for me in grade 11, I was kind of fortunate to get that opportunity to where I had actually collected a lot of hours towards my trade in grade 11 and grade 12.
Oh, that's really good. Are there programs like that now, do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, that's
yeah, I would imagine like high schools have apprenticeship programs. There was like at the time, I think you get like $1,000 grant or something if you do it, and
Wow,
something like that.
that's awesome. No, I think we need more of that.
Yeah,
sure, especially out of high school.
Yeah, for
So
people
did you
going the trades route.
From there? So as you're doing the trades, how long were you in the trades for up until?
Yeah,
or finding that was your path at the time. How long did that go for?
Yeah, so from 14 to basically 21, age 14 to age 21, I was doing it. So when I graduated high school, I finished my hours. So I worked for about 2 years full time. Went to BCIT on and off to complete the trade, and then about 21, 22, I was done. And then kind of near the end, I was already planning to go to into engineering. Like maybe when I was 20 years old, I was thinking, okay, I know I want to finish the trade and kind of complete that part of my my education. But my dad, he had been a machinist for 40 plus years, and so he always encouraged me to pursue something else, or something more. I don't think he wanted to see me go down the same path because it's trades are amazing and a lot of respect to people. It can be hard work,
Very hard work. Yeah.
Yeah. Different elements, whether you're in construction or other trades that are, you're dealing with outdoors, dealing with temperatures, dealing with, just hard labor and
manual labor.
Yeah.
Yeah. It breaks down your body over time.
Yeah. Not always the safest. And so my dad, machinist is kind of a clean, but you are dealing with heavy equipment. You're breathing in a lot of machine oils. You're, his hearing is bad, he's avoided major injuries, but he had some bad cuts and, lots of stitches, stuff like that. So, he encouraged me to consider other things. And I always kind of knew I wanted to go and do something else. I just didn't know what. But
and every father would want, save your hands, save your, this is each generation's like, okay, you should be a little bit, when I say better, I mean safer and more. Yeah, I get it. Because I mean, even with my father is an electrician. Yeah. And with the trades, I did do the summer things and pulling wire in the winter and just like, oh my goodness. And I worked building houses in the summer while I was going to university and I did concrete, and those guys told me, don't ever do concrete. Yeah. And I was like, these are lifers. And they said, this is our job. You keep going to school. And they made a point of that. So I'm thankful they did that. Yeah. It's, you could see these guys just they were pretty beat. Yeah. Pretty beat. So they said, you better be doing this only for summer. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And so I had a lot of good mentors and kind of people coaching me. Even just aside from my dad, I'd worked for the company for a while. So I knew a lot of welders, I knew a lot of fabricators, a lot of different tradespeoples. And so, so I knew I was going to do something else, and engineering at that point made a lot of sense. I liked manufacturing. I liked the mechanical part of it. I had engineers that were friends of mine. I'd worked with engineers at the company. So then I decided to go into, engineering. And
so that job there, but if you're looking back, I mean, it's almost, I know when people, they often say, like, if you're going to own a restaurant, you should know how to do the dishes. Like that kind of gave you a look into the physical part of the engineering. So it kind of gave you a really well-rounded perspective there. Like looking back, you're going, it was a pretty good choice to do.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. No, and it really helped kind of propel my career later on, which we'll get into, but like having an opportunity to not even just I held every sort of role you could in a manufacturing company, right? From, like I say, not being able to be in the shop, eventually learning to drive a forklift, eventually getting into the shop and maintaining the equipment and, refilling coolant, refilling oils, just cleaning filters and basic kind of maintenance duties. And you kind of step your way to where you have a basic understanding of all the different
everything.
tasks. Yeah.
So you kind of know how to run a whole operation in a sense.
In a sense, yeah.
Good. No, that's pretty good. So as you're when did you make that decision? So you were going to school at the same time as you're working. Is that correct?
Yeah. With the trade, you would do 7-week stints at BCIT.
Oh yeah, and so BCIT is the British Columbia Institute of Technology for our worldwide listeners.
That's
Just got to
right.
make sure this is going through the airways. But it's a really good school here in British Columbia because it's known for, if you go to BCIT, you get a job when you leave. It's kind of always been that way. Whereas the universities, sometimes you're getting your degree. But BCIT. I know a lot of my friends who've gone there, and they're pretty much within a month they're working.
Yep. No, for sure.
Much. So that's cool. So they allowed you to go to school and then work and then go. Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of apprenticeship programs are that way, where they'll the company will sponsor you to go to work. Some will actually pay you while you're there. Some will, it's just about giving you time off to be there. There's, again, grants available for levels 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, wow. in your apprenticeship. So financially they make it viable, if you're, have bills to pay. So anyways, I finished that, and kind of towards the tail end of that is when I made the decision I was going to go back to school, and had kind of taken a couple other courses as well. I needed to upgrade my math, my physics, and kind of was planning for the next step. And I actually first went to University of the Fraser Valley, UFV, to do the first, because with UBC or UVic, you can transfer in to your second year. Okay. And that's what I ended up doing.
So when you were at BCI, were you thinking was the engineering, when did that engineering bulb pop? When was it okay, now I'm going to go this direction? What was that like? Were you thinking here I am, here's the trade? What was that transition? Was it a moment? Was it a bike ride? Was it a wake up at 3 a.m.? What happened there? Take me through that.
I don't think there was ever a big epiphany that way. I guess for me, I've always just
been curious.
Been curious and tried to have a plan. I knew I always wanted something to complement what I had already done. I liked what I was doing. That's the thing, is I really enjoyed machining. I knew I didn't want to do it for the rest of my life, but I didn't want to, go and be a doctor or something completely unrelated. I knew I wanted to stay in manufacturing, and that's kind of where I had built up a lot of skills and knowledge at that point. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the different options, it was, it just made sense. I don't think there was ever a light bulb. It was just okay, what can I do that's going to complement what I've already done? I knew about engineering, and I knew I enjoyed, math and those types of things.
It sounded like it was a natural progression. So you're it sounds like you're sort of future thinking. Okay. Yeah. Because as a young person, you do think about, okay, what is my future career going to be, right? Yeah. Especially when school's winding down. You know, you got a lot of time ahead of you. Yeah. Got a lot of life to live. So then how was that transition then into taking the classes at university? Did you work during university at all?
No. Okay. I was in a co-op program, so it's
brilliant.
Yeah, so I did do work terms, but while I was in school, like you mentioned earlier, the heavy course load, I wasn't doing any part-time work. So basically, the way the co-op program works is you would do your first year of engineering, which is all your base level math and science. And then the second year, you would do a term, and then you would go off and do a co-op term. And then you kind of alternate until you've done 4 or 5 4-month work terms, and you complete your 4 years of university. So it normally adds a year or so to your education, but you come out of it with experience and just a little bit more hireable, I guess, by the end of it.
So when you say hireable, so is it fair to say now that you've kind of gone through this program and you're kind of getting work experience and you're getting school experience, so they're kind of they're really preparing you for the next life. So what's that like towards the end? So you're in your post-secondary, you're about to graduate. Mm-hmm. Now life's going to sort of be real. Well, not that it wasn't earlier. What was that transition like to okay, now I got to better find a career, or was there something in place already? Take me through sort of a young gentleman figuring out those waters out.
Yeah, well, the co-op program's great, and I'm a huge advocate for it. I've hired a lot of co-op students, and I encourage, people that are younger and thinking about what to do to pursue it. I know there's co-op programs for all different types of careers now. We actually have an HR co-op student with us right now and an accounting co-op student as well.
That's fantastic. So I'm
yeah.
going to take a bit of this podcast and so for those younger people listening, I want to get your perspective on that. I think you have some valuable advice for them. So we'll deviate a little bit and hopefully help somebody out there. But sorry, keep going there.
Yeah, no, it's nice because, it's a very, the co-op program is kind of mutually beneficial. It's for the employer, it's a affordable way to get some new and fresh ideas, kind of boost the team, bring in this young kind of energy. There's subsidies available through Work BC that cover, even 50% or so of the cost. So it's really a minor expense for the business. And for the employee or the student, it's an opportunity to try things you've never, you're trying to figure it out, So I actually used the opportunity. I did 8 months working for a construction company, PCL Construction. And I specifically chose them because I'd only ever worked in manufacturing. And I knew I kind of wanted to go in that direction for my career, but I always thought maybe I'd have a lingering, question about what else, what does a different industry, what does construction look like?
Okay.
So I did that and kind of, figured that out. And again, I actually really enjoyed it. But by the end, when I'm transitioning to start my career, often those co-op positions, if you do well, they turn into job offers. So, and that was the case for me, is I had a job offer to go back to PCL Construction. Whoops, threw something there.
That's okay.
But yeah, it then you make your decision about where you want to go. But I had a few different options by the end of it.
So what was the options you had there? So you had PCL. Were you being scouted?
I don't know, not really scouted, but you put your name out there. I had a couple of job offers. I actually had 3 job offers. So one was through the co-op program, a company that I'd worked for. That was PCL Construction. But the job was in Edmonton.
Okay.
And I'd worked in Edmonton. I enjoyed it, but I was more interested in working in Calgary. It's kind of where I had family and stuff, but there wasn't an opportunity there.
Okay.
So I turned that down. The other 2 were in the Lower Mainland. One what ended up being the company I chose. It was called Advantech. So I'm a marine enclosure company. So designing
Oh wow.
Doors and windows, things like that for boats.
Okay. Like all types of ships.
They did. The company's grown a lot, so they basically acquired a lot of different brands. So they had a yacht division, they had a workboat division. So they did work for Seaspan, they did work for U.S. Navy boats, they did all sorts of different types.
So that's a problem-solving position.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. It was a good first
So
go.
I did a bit of research, or you've from our conversations in the past there. What was TELUS about? Or not TELUS, Tesla. Was that part of that as well? That like, how does someone get on that radar? Was that the same time, or am I jumping ahead?
No, you're spot on. So in the co-op program, a lot of universities kind of develop almost partnerships with companies. So the company ends up developing a good relationship with that university. The coordinators that are helping place students, are working with HR at those companies. And Tesla at the time was actually one of the companies that had a really good relationship with UVic. California is not that far. They would come up to our school and put on job fairs and stuff like that. Tesla was kind of a smaller company at that point. They were still big, but they were growing, not nearly what they are today. And so that was a position I was interested in and went through. Even now I have a few friends that still work there they had gotten co-op positions, ended up getting full-time offers and still work for them. So, I didn't get the position. I went through a long interview process and kind of multiple rounds of interviews, but yeah, didn't get it. But again, it's another one of those scenarios where it could have changed the trajectory of my career had I gone to work for Tesla.
Well, relocation, you wouldn't be here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a weird time where, um, obviously working or living in San Francisco and kind of Palo Alto and the surrounding areas, like some of the most expensive in the world.
Yes.
And they weren't paying their co-ops particularly well at the time. I think it was like 25 US an hour or something like that.
To live in
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So students were
Tenting?
bunking like 5 people to a 2-bedroom type of thing. Just to make it work. But right around the time that I was there, they completely changed their program. They started offering competitive wages. So as a student, you could go down there and make, I don't know, maybe $35 an hour US, which, for what the cost of living wasn't crazy or anything, but at least you could go there and not come out behind,
Oh, absolutely. It doesn't make sense to transfer if you're coming out behind. I mean, now they're a huge company and I hope they're paying their people well.
I imagine they are. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's so that's, but that's okay. I mean, I'm glad because you're here now today.
Yeah.
So that's that door closed, but another one
Yep.
opened. So what did you choose after that? And what was the...
Well, I think that was actually when I did decide to go work for the construction company. Okay. So that, if I remember that semester, the interview process with Tesla lasted like 2 months. So it was, by the time that kind of ended, I didn't have much time to find a job, but I knew if I wanted to, if I was going to do something, I want to do something different. And so the PCL thing kind of came around, and I ended up finding that job. And very quick whirlwind, I lost the Tesla position. Within 2 weeks, I had the PCL position.
Okay, good. So you weren't like, because I was going to ask you about your emotion, like when one door closes, how did you deal with that transition? What was, you can remember what you were feeling there? Because there's obviously, you don't want to take things personally because it's really, but you kind of maybe do, or what was that like for you emotionally, taking that transition, or what was that like?
The only tough part was, like, I was one of the final 2 candidates, and so they're as transparent as I could have been, and what I try to do in those hiring processes is, be transparent and that's what they were. Right until the end, there was maybe 2 weeks or so where I wasn't hearing much, and so you kind of figure, well, maybe they're going a different route, but maybe the other candidate hadn't committed to them yet or something. There's something weird where there was maybe a 2-week period. That was the only bit of bitterness that I had, was that was a critical 2 weeks for me to maybe find another job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, like engineering, like you mentioned, is kind of hectic. So normally you're trying to land this position. You try and give yourself time, maybe a month or 2 before the end of semester. Well, this had dragged on to where now I'm into exams, and I need to find a job in the next kind of 3 weeks. So the Tesla thing ends. It's kind of just, there's no time to be upset about it. You just have to pivot and find something. And, you got maybe 2-3 weeks to do so. And so, it was just a bit of a whirlwind, because I remember I had to write an exam maybe the next day or the day after finding out that news. And, so your mind is, I'm moving to California in 3 weeks, and then now I'm not. Okay, I got to write this exam. I also got to find another job. I find the PCL job. Okay, now I'm actually moving to Edmonton in 2 weeks or a week. And so it's a bit of a whirlwind. But I often tell people, like, engineering, you learn a lot of technical skills, but just the process of going through a demanding course load and having to figure out your schedule, figure out your prioritization, figure out how to communicate with a lot of different, team members, a lot of different, and just get through it. Like, those skills are like far in excess of any technical skills you learn. It's just about how to manage your own schedule and time.
Kind of prepare you for that, right? For
Totally.
that transition. But I can imagine there's some anxiety, but when you're right. You just got to keep moving.
Yep.
I think you just kind of, but I mean, things worked out obviously
Yeah.
because you're here today.
Yep.
So PCL, you moved to Edmonton. Obviously, we're always thinking that I've got to get I want to come back to BC. It's a very beautiful province we live in here for the worldwide audience.
Yeah.
Once again, really trying to push it.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, Alberta has cold winters.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're green grass pretty much 11 months of the year here. So when you went there, were you? How old were you when you went to Edmonton? What, roughly?
Probably 22.
Okay. Oh, yeah, you're fine.
23 maybe.
You can,
Yeah.
yeah. Ignorance is bliss. You don't know.
Yeah. And honestly, like that was the thing for me. And what made it kind of tricky to pick a path in the end was because I really thoroughly enjoyed everything. Like I'm a curious person. I like kind of adventure. I like change. So when I would go to a new place, a new company, a new industry, I was kind of like wide-eyed and like, this is cool, you know? Like in PCL in Edmonton, I was working in a hospital, in a Stollery's Children's Hospital in the University of Alberta. And I'm like, every day I'm going to work thinking I would have never expected to end up in a hospital working on surgical suites. We were renovating surgical suites, where, you know, you got to like gown up and you know, there's live patients and they don't shut down the hospital, right? They got to keep the hospital going.
I couldn't imagine.
Yeah. So it's like a totally unique experience that, for me being a manufacturing guy to go and work in that type of setting, it was really cool. Right.
Yeah.
And so, like working in Edmonton, getting to, you know, explore a new city, even though it was winter. It didn't really bother me. I was more interested.
With your job though, you're kind of not sitting out in the weather. You're just, you're immersed in your job.
Yeah.
Right? You're
totally.
in the hospital. You're doing that. That's pretty cool. I hope you didn't you weren't like putting dust and stuff in the surgery room.
No, there's a lot of provisions for negative air units. You know, you have to draw negative air to keep all the contaminants, all the dust in the construction spaces. There's regular inspections. There's all sorts of, regulations for that type of work in a hospital. I learned a lot about all of that, but it, like I said, it was a good experience.
So from there, you were, how long did you work in Edmonton for then?
Just 4 months.
Okay.
Yeah. And then back to school.
Okay. Oh, so after, wow, engineering, there was a bit of school, eh? And
yeah.
Okay. So when were you a full-fledged school? We're always learning, right? I'm sure.
Yeah.
But when was it like school's done?
Yeah.
Like we're now looking for the full-time. Yeah.
So I was probably 23 years old. Had a couple of job offers, went to work in Aldergrove and spent 5 years there. And like you said, I always kind of, I always was like, I'm always looking for what's next from a like professional development wise and kind of, always wanting to learn something. So those next kind of 5 years, I kind of did the same thing. I was, like when you become an engineer, technically when you graduate from engineering school, you can't call yourself an engineer. You're an engineer in training in EIT. So the first like 4 or 5 years of your engineering profession is often working towards becoming a professional engineer, or what is technically an engineer in Canada. So that's what I did. And there's more training to do. There's law and ethics exams that you have to write. And work experience, of course, that you need. You need 4 years or 5 years, I believe, of work experience. So that's what my next kind of focus was.
Okay.
And did that.
That's intense.
Yeah.
You go back to your youth, the problem solving. It sounds like early you kind of had this drive. I've known you for a few years here now, and I know you do have drive. You're I brought this up with two people. Like, you are a talented squash player, and like I've said before, squash, Google it. It is not the vegetable, but you set your mind to it, and you want to get better, and you're doing what you need to do to get better. So it makes sense. Now I see how you kind of developed your game to what your career is like too. So you kind of have that mindset. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna just jump to what you're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
You're a director of engineering.
Yep.
So what is a director of engineering? What are your responsibilities core for? And we'll come back and sort of bring it in. We're sort of jumping around here, but what is the role of a director of engineering? What's your responsibilities?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, working for a manufacturing company, it's a leadership position. So I have a role on the leadership team. So oversee engineering. I have a team of engineers. We, are developing products. We're processing the orders for the company. There's an element of product quality that I oversee as well. And then it's really just like cross-functional leadership. So we have, we have a young sales team. And of course, with my background as a machinist and having manufacturing trades experience, I tend to work in an operations role as well. Anything from helping with production scheduling to, machine shop, execution, understanding materials, understanding tooling and different components of manufacturing operations. It's a pretty variable position, which is kind of true for all of engineering. Like a lot of people hear the word engineer, and I think it means something different to a lot of different people.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because there's so many different faculties of engineering, and subsets of engineering specializations and so on and so forth. So it's for me it's more of a mechanical setting in manufacturing, developing product, designing equipment, and I'm kind of just overseeing seeing that and helping. I was brought there to develop a team. It's a growing company, so we have a young team, so it's a lot of really leadership.
Interesting. So you're kind of building the culture there as well as the team and bringing the right people in.
For sure.
Okay, so that's an interesting position.
Yeah,
kind of go from but it's your background obviously. With once you know the ins and outs of all the processes and what needs to get done, it's so much easier to communicate to everybody and work with everybody as opposed to just not knowing and then people have to trust you. So that's been a nice transition, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's nice again, like going through. So I had my co-op experience, and I've worked for 3 different manufacturing companies. This is my 4th now. So, also seeing how different companies do different things,
Absolutely,
right? Because there's rarely a right and a wrong way, when you're talking about manufacturing, there's a lot of different ways to make something, right? You can machine it, you can laser cut it, you can plasma cut it, you can water jet cut it, you can burn metal or cut metal in a lot of different ways, and all the processes and kind of best practices or standards that go into that. It's different for different industries. It's different for different companies, values play a part in that as well, as far as like, whether I guess, the company is more, more of an improvement type of like really wanting to be on the cutting edge of it, or whether they're just really focused on perfecting the way that they do things, So, so that kind of perspective of knowing different ways to do things has helped me as well. And in like the types of companies I've worked for tend to be small to mid-size manufacturing. So it's more entrepreneurial settings where the owner is hands-on and quite involved in the day-to-day. And so that adds a new dynamic as well, because their values system and their kind of tribal knowledge or expertise in the industry tends to kind of drive the business and how we execute. So that's the case of the company I work for now, and it adds a different challenge and a different dynamic as well.
So when you're building this, because of your position now, when you're building your team, what are, this might be some advice for people out there looking at this career as well. What are you looking for to build that team?
Yeah. I mean, I think every role, every company is a bit different as far as what I'm looking for. Just the general things. I mean, it is a team, so I'm going to evaluate kind of what the team needs, skill wise, right? Oftentimes it's if I'm the leader of the team, it's going to be skills that complement where maybe I'm weak, that's one thing I look for, is having a strong, technical number two. I took a more of a leadership, even from back to my school days, like I was the one kind of getting everyone together, helping people communicate, scheduling and delegating work and organizing, our time, making sure everyone's coming together to meet and discuss different ideas. And that was my default. Like I always took on that type of role. So I've also worked with a lot of really strong technical design engineers. And so when I'm building a team, that's one area, depending on the role, that I look to have strength in. Other than that, like I've used a few tools that help me identify kind of what I'm looking for. So different personality assessments, DISC is one, where, having worked with a lot of different engineers, I kind of have an idea of, in different positions, what type of personality is going to do well within that team. Engineers, for example, on the I'll just talk about DISC because it's one of the personality tools.
I've never heard of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
It's so DISC, D stands for dominant, I stands for inspiring, S stands for supportive, and C stands for conscientious. And so you do a personality kind of assessment, and it's just like word association, and those words that they choose are, I believe, used in like psychological kind of studies. They tend to elicit certain human emotions. So if you answer that set of questions, it kind of gives you an idea of your baseline personality.
Okay.
So they're somewhat subjective. They're not, but they do paint somewhat of a good baseline for where to start.
Exactly. I was going to say from where to start. Obviously, then you have the interview process. You get to meet people, but that's okay.
Exactly. And you can, through the interview process, you kind of dive deeper, right? You know what questions to ask. What situations to kind of prod and understand a little bit more about. But for an engineer, like if you're talking about the C scale, the conscientious scale, well, of course, you're looking for generally somebody who's more conscientious, somebody who's a detail-oriented problem solver. On the other side of the scale is a flexible person who's more spontaneous. Maybe a salesperson is a good flexible person, right? Not so concerned about the rules or the specific processes that need to follow, because it's really whatever the customer needs, we'll figure it out. We'll adapt. Exactly. So with an engineer, you want somebody generally who's a little bit more on that side of the spectrum. So yeah, that's something I've always implemented is understanding of the dynamics of the team for building an engineering team.
So, I can see when you're schooling, kind of the delegating, because that is like with an engineer, any director or managing, it's I've always felt you're there to support, give the people the tools and the expertise to do their best, right? You're there just to sort of help them grow and help them produce and be positive in their experiences, for sure, as best as we can. So in your position right now with your engineer, without going into honestly, engineering to me is like, it's so complex. There are so many layers to it. It's fascinating because it's everything we work, live and breathe and build, and everything is engineering to one point. What keeps you passionate at this stage in your life, in your career, to like, this is like the future's bright, or what's kind of keeping you up or keeping you motivated?
Yeah. I mean, there's probably a couple of things. I mean, manufacturing has always been my passion. It's kind of like, I think of it as it's part of me, it's in my blood, and that comes with my relationship with my dad and kind of working with him from a very young age. And some of my earliest memories were visiting him in the shop when I was 10, 11 years old, and kind of the smell of machine oil and coolant, and kind of there's something nostalgic and something that's like in me, So that's something that for as long as I'm working will always be there when I'm in manufacturing. As I walk into the shop each day and I see the machines running, and I see the weld fumes kind of going up, and it's like I'm where I need to be, like
Oh, right
that's
on.
home
Yeah,
for
that's
me.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it, it's just the environment, the setting is kind of something I'm familiar with and I enjoy. Um, professionally, I think it's, I'm just a couple courses away from finishing my MBA. That's something I've been working on for the last few
So you're
years.
still doing school. Well,
Yeah.
good for you, man.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Where do you find how's that? What's that like balancing that time?
Yeah. It's not bad. It honestly, I started it in COVID times, so 2019, 2020. And basically if I took one class a semester, it would take 6 years. And so I've pretty much been on that pace. It's
Okay.
there's been some semesters I've taken off. There's been a couple semesters I've done 2 classes. That's the most I would do when I'm working and
Yeah.
with everything else going on. But yeah, it's manageable,
Yeah.
one class a semester, and it's like, a couple hours on the weekend, maybe a couple hours throughout the week, in the evenings.
That seems more realistic.
Yeah.
You're not taking a full engineering course.
No,
Okay.
no.
That makes sense.
And honestly, like that's the kind of funny part is when you go through an intensive program, there's lots out there, but for engineering, that's for sure difficult. Doing one class, even if you're working full time, it's more than manageable. Like I don't find it too difficult. It's a different type of learning though, like it's a
Yeah.
lot more reading, a lot of case study based work. So it's less, less technical, less math. I mean, there are some accounting courses, statistics, things like that, but it's a lot of like marketing and strategy and global
So
globalization.
is it an
and things.
overview kind of like
Yeah.
an overview? Okay. Well, it's good knowledge to know. I mean,
Yeah.
especially in today's world, you kind of got to know a little everything.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a question popped in my head. What's the coolest thing you've ever made as an engineer?
Coolest thing?
Yeah. Even on your own time, if you 3D printed something cool, like a widget or
Yeah.
a new way to hang your clothes in the closet. I don't know. I've seen those out there.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, I just threw it out there. I was just curious.
Yeah.
I mean, I could speak with you about more specific. We should just have an engineering podcast.
Yeah. Honestly, like the answer to that question is probably less about my time as an engineer and more as a machinist, because
Yeah.
I find like some of the more rewarding things that I've made are the things that I physically machined,
And is that from concept to finished, or how did that
well,
work?
no, in those cases, normally the product was already engineered,
Okay.
right? So as a machinist, there may be some design that you do for designing jigs and fixtures, ways to hold the material.
Okay.
But the actual product itself is already designed, and then you would machine it into the final kind of
Oh,
product.
Okay.
Yeah. So we early on, I made like a lot of we were building natural gas compressors, so it was a lot of like crankshafts, and there were some large crankshafts and connecting rods and things like that that are pretty unique and pretty cool. I'll show you. After
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, please do. I think with this podcast too, I'll put up some images. If this makes, because I'll do a couple little social media clips too. So if that comes up, I'll maybe we could show that one too. It's fascinating when I talk to different people, like just how different each conversation can get. But I always ask this one question here. We're doing pretty good. We're at 53 minutes. It goes by pretty quick.
It does, yeah.
So looking back, what advice would you give young Colton through your career? This could be life or career or anything. What sort of advice would you give yourself looking back? And take your time. This is, we got no rush. You don't have, we can edit things and go from there, but just do a little self-reflection there, Colton.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a tough one because, like, in a lot of ways, I wouldn't change anything. Like you say, I'm here. I'm happy. I've got a great wife at home and great family, a great job,
and a puppy dog.
And a puppy dog. Yeah. So it's like I'm happy. So I don't regret anything. I don't. Some of the some of the best decisions are the ones that I didn't make, like, um, we haven't talked about this, but there was a time where after engineering, I was considering, like, again, I always think about what's the next, right? Like what I want to do with my next kind of 5-10 years. Um, I ended up doing my MBA, but prior to that, I thought about going to law school,
Okay.
because I was thinking more about like IP and intellectual property, copyright, and a way that, you know, it's a bit of a niche area of law that in Canada, there's not a lot of law firms that specialize in that.
Okay.
So
I want to interrupt you here. So what age was that?
that was about like 24,
Okay, so you're in
25.
that transition. Okay,
Yeah.
wow. So you had the engineer. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Key. Yeah. So where was that interest? How'd that get sparked? Go ahead. I'll let you finish
Yeah,
there.
I don't know other than like I've always, again, the curiosity, and also the challenge. Like I'm somebody, I need a little bit of friction. Like I need something challenging to be working towards. And so it honestly was just like I had that idea of, okay, well, I'd been going to school with law students and I knew a little bit about that path. I thought, well, this is something like I could do that, why not? And so I started kind of going down that path. Ultimately, I kind of refocused and went the engineering route as I was currently on. And so I think that was the right decision. I certainly no regrets. But I'd gone for a year. I was planning, like I wrote the law school admissions test. I was preparing to to potentially go into law. Back to your original question, which was what advice would you give? I think that's maybe one thing for myself is just having a little bit more focus. Um, like I said, I'm always inquisitive, thinking about, different options and which is good. It's good to consider those things, but also like, to really execute and to really be great at something is to have a certain level of commitment and focus to a certain path. So, um, at times maybe I was a bit distracted by things that, were just kind of ideas but ultimately I think I made the right decisions in the end and it just kind of, but
Well, it
yeah.
sounds like but when you're making that decision for the law, like you did sort of go down that route just to try it, but
Hmm.
something brought you back. So I think your willingness to at least sort of just because now, I mean, you can't have any regrets on it, really, what I'm
True.
hearing, because you did
Yes.
sort of go down the path. Nah, I'm going to go this way,
Yeah,
right? But if you just went one path and thought, oh, that was always in the back of my head,
that's
you may
true.
have not a lingering, oh, I should have, but just, oh, you never know,
Yeah,
right? And those are the ones you want to eliminate, right? As long
that's
as you
true.
try it.
Yeah,
And I think at that age too, that's when you do try it
that's
because there's
true.
no real consequences, right? It's not like you have a family and a
Yeah.
mortgage and all that. So it's like, yeah, I went here, but that's fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's cool. I find law fascinating as well. It's really a especially in how you present it in the courts. It's this theatrical performance.
Hmm.
It really is.
Yeah.
But
But it worked out for me because my wife's a paralegal, so she works in
it
in corporate law, and
it all comes full circle. It just
uh,
makes sense now.
yeah,
You
yeah.
get that
So
perspective.
yeah, so I get to hear her stories, and it kind of actually reinforces the decision I made and not going that route myself because I see, it's a difficult lifestyle, a difficult profession to be in, but still I get to scratch that itch a little bit by hearing her stories and kind of learning a little
Yeah.
bit about her work.
That's pretty
So
cool.
yeah,
I
so it's
didn't
fun.
know. Okay, well, we're almost at an hour, but I've got one final question here. What advice would you give young engineers or people in your position, maybe at the age of 19, 20, 21? Anything you'd kind of offer
Hmm.
for the next generation?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first things come to mind, which is kind of just building off what we just talked about, is to try different things, especially at that age, right? Um, there are a lot of programs out there, whether it's co-op programs, whether it's um, you know, different grants for trades, just to try different things. And I don't know what the statistics are, but you hear of people changing careers a lot. Um, and I think, you know, while you're young, while you have the flexibility and maybe you don't have the same commitments as you would when you're 25 or 30, take those opportunities, you know, travel, go see the world, try working in different industries, try different things that you never thought you would even consider. And then, like you say, you won't have any regrets. And it's all part of just kind of figuring it out, you know, it's all part of the journey. So I mean, that's what I did. And it wasn't really ever planned that way. It just, you know, kind of happened. But when the opportunities came, I tried to take them, and I think it served me well. And now I'm confident in the direction I ended up going. And I think, yeah, for young people, that's what I would recommend, is just put yourself out there and try different things.
I agree.
Yeah.
Colton, that's pretty good, buddy. That's an hour of a podcast. So I
Perfect.
just want to sort of, I mean, there's so many, as you're speaking, there's like, oh, I want to just kind of go down that route. But I mean, for another day, we might have you on here as you grow with your masters and then your future, because it sounds like you've got your 5 and 10 year plan. So I'm really curious to see what your next 5 years is going to be.
Yeah.
Not that we'll have you on in 5 years, but just, you know, as you grow, if you can offer any advice, because as this podcast grows, maybe it could be career advice for people or something. But
for sure.
Engineering, an incredible field. You do some amazing stuff. I'm glad I got to meet you in Chilliwack. I didn't know you were a lifer here in Chilliwack. That's pretty cool. You've seen the growth of this city for sure.
Yeah.
But thanks for the conversation.
Thank you.
And that's it. Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening, the world, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for listening to OverArch, the People Podcast.